apologize that you got to listen to me again for another little while. Eddie Hill asked me to speak. I was like, yeah, sure. He's like, yeah, but you got to speak for an hour and a half. I'm like, oh, thanks. So, no, I'm just kidding, Eddie. But this next topic, guys, is something I'm super passionate about. Base running. I mean, if you guys look at me, I'm not a pristine athlete. I was never a great runner. Nobody ever said, man, that Broughton guy, he can really run. That was never said about me, ever. But I did play for Matt Tallarico. He was my assistant coach at the University of Dayton where I played. He's now the base running coordinator for the New York Yankees. And he had some very unique ideas, some systems that he taught to us, and it worked. In 2012, we led all Division I in stolen bases. We had 164 stolen bases in one season. We stole at an 89% clip that year, even at 164 steals. So it really worked. We ended up winning the Atlantic 10 Conference regular season. We won the tournament and played in the regional, which is still the only team at Dayton to ever play in the regional at Texas A&M. So I'm very proud of that. But that's where, base running kind of started with me, was playing in that system, and honestly, it got me my first job in coaching. My first job was at Earlham College, like I talked about earlier. Steve Sackasitz, head coach there, knew Matt Tallarico. He had talked to Matt Tallarico about base running. He wanted to implement a system. He said, well, you need to hire this guy. This guy played for me. So that was kind of gave me my shot. It was one of my niches. I can remember going to Clemson as an assistant at Piedmont, and Monty sitting up in his office, and I basically went over everything I'm going to go over with you guys in his office. And little did I know that day that I would at least start a relationship with him, show him that I was passionate about this, and I honestly think that it's helped me get a job, kind of throughout my stops. Because of this niche with base running. So I call it base running the special teams of baseball because it's rarely worked on as much as everything else. It's rarely worked on as much as hitting, pitching, defense. Base running is often neglected. Your outfielders usually are good base runners because they're the ones you stick out there during first and third defense, right? But if you really want to be a good base running team, then you got to work on it. You got to dedicate time to it at practice. So one thing that I like to talk about is the role of the base coaches. I think the base coaches can have a tremendous role in having a base running system, okay? Especially the first base coach, because the first base coach is going to have the most dialogue and have the most traffic throughout the course of the game. So I think that the first base coach, I consider him to be the special teams coordinator. All right? You want to use the base coaches as a weapon. The third base coach, in my opinion, might as well just be a guy that holds up a stop sign. Okay? That's basically all you are. It's just a stop sign. Okay? You can put on some signs, whatever. You might not have a player over there for 6 innings. So you really can't impact them that much when it comes to base stealing. You can, but you got to get more creative. But if you have a first base coach that understands the system, understands how to read pitchers, understands how to communicate with players quickly, clearly, easily, you can take advantage of the defense, in my opinion. The first base coach can call the play, for instance. They can call the play. They can come up to and whisper or something. I used to use physical touch signs a lot when I was the first base coach. Hey man, if I touch you on the right shoulder, it's green light. If I touch you on the left shoulder, it's red light. I mean, how easy is that? You just go over there, touch him on the shoulder. All right, that guy, you didn't say anything to him. Nobody saw a sign put on. Nothing was put on. But that base runner knows that he's in green light. So that's just one way you can call the play. You also have the same vantage point as the base runner. So you're looking at the pitcher from the same vantage point. So you're going to be able to communicate things that you see to the base runner that he sees as well because you guys have the same vantage point. The third base coach has the open side for a righty per se, and the first base coach is looking at the guy's back. So the vantage point, I think, is also an advantage. You can also use the third base coach, of course, to put on a play. You can change your positioning and foul ground. That was one way I used to do it. is that, hey, if I stand, to this side of the baseline, that means green light. If I'm in the box or behind, it's red light. Whatever. It doesn't have to be anything special, but that's how you can turn on green and red. Sometimes, if you have the open side of the pitcher, especially a righty, you can see some things that you don't see from the backside. So I think if you can be in cohesion with both base coaches, that's where it becomes a weapon. I'm not going to go through all this. This is just something that I wanted to share. This is something I put together for our guys at Clemson. This is all the verbiage that we used on the bases. So if a coach said one of these things, I wanted to define that for them. So if I said make sure at ball 4, they knew what that meant. Or if I said, hey, read the ball in the zone. That was one that I would do. I would do this sign right here. This was our sign for read the ball in the zone. Because as the runner at second base, when 2 strikes, I can read the ball into the strike zone. And if it gets into the strike zone, I can just take off. I don't have to wait for the swing. Because I can see the ball into the strike zone. So that was another verbiage that I used. But this is just something that I wanted to give our guys, so that way it was almost like a playbook. So that way they knew if I said something to them, that they knew what that meant. So that was just one thing I wanted to share with you guys. Something to keep in mind. This is less about base stealing, this is more about base running. So base running, in my opinion, is the one thing that never slumps. People say speed never slumps. I think that base running is a part, if you think about it, it's part of every single game. It doesn't matter who you're facing, it doesn't matter how good the guy is on the mound, it doesn't matter the weather, the wind, the sun, does not matter. Base running is always going to show up over the course of the game, no matter what game you play, no matter what level you're at. So in my opinion, this is what makes a great base runner, is that they are instinctual. They are instinctual. You never stop running until the defense makes you stop. And you always know where the ball is. Those were our 2 golden rules. You always run until the defense makes you stop, and you always know where the ball is. I'm a big believer in that. The base runner should always run with their head up and always run where they can see the ball. So guys that run with their head down, like a guy that steals a bag, or maybe he's going on a dirt ball or something, and he slides into second base when there's no play. That tells me right there the guy doesn't know where the ball is. So that was a big thing for me, something I really always tried to coach into our guys. Grass, dirt, grass, I'll cover that in a second. I believe that running in a gradual arc is the best way to run around the bases. So this is up to debate for a lot of people. Some people believe going straight and bowing out, making almost a question mark type route. I think if you're going more than one base at a time, then you should run in a gradual arc. Because that is what's going to be able to keep you in stride, and it's much less rigid, much more efficient, much easier for me to keep my stride and my speed. It's almost like a drag or a dig route in football versus a square in. What's the difference between those 2 routes? They're kind of the same action, but a dig or a drag works because the guy doesn't have to slow down. But if he runs a square in, he's going to have to chop, slow down, kill his momentum. That's why a drag or a dig works. So I almost look at it, if I have a guy that's a wide receiver in football, put that guy on the bases and say, hey, just run a drag all the way around the bases. Sometimes that can really help them understand what you're looking for. I think that you should, when you have your eyes up early, you also have to get your eyes down to a very finite part of the base early enough to where your body will organize your steps. So what I mean by that is that guys that pick up the base late are often guys that have to chop their feet once they get to the bag in order to make sure they hit the bag. But if you pick up the bag a little bit earlier and teach them to pick up the bag earlier, their body will organize their steps in order to stay in stride. So that was one thing that I always like to teach into our guys. Aim small, miss small. You definitely want to have some inward body lean and posture. And I believe, this is just my opinion, that the right foot is preferred. Does it matter that much? No. But I think that preferably you would want your right foot to hit the bag because it would curb your centrifugal force. Okay, college word, centrifugal force. All right? So I think that the right foot is preferred, but it's not an absolute. Okay? So that's just something to keep in mind. some things that you can do. So what I would do is I would find the dirtiest base as possible. I'd paint the corners. You guys have probably seen this before. Maybe you've done it yourself. That was one way we worked on it. You can see here this base was pointed. This is a perfect position right here. I love this photo. The other reason why I think that the right foot is good to hit in the inside corner is because your left arm is up when your right foot hits the bag. And as you hit the bag and I pull my left arm, you can square off your route and get to the next base in a much more straighter arc than if you hit with the left foot. You're likely going to have to take one step outside of that lane before you can get into a straight line. So I believe that the right foot, this is a perfect position right here. His eyes are down, his left arm is up, his right foot's going to hit, he's got great body lean, he's killing his centrifugal force. The faster I go, the more I need to have body lean. So if you have a really fast guy and he has a huge route around the bases, it's likely because he's not running with enough body lean. So just something to keep in mind. The faster you're moving, the more centrifugal force outward that you're going to create. This is grass, dirt, grass, like I was talking about earlier. This was a rule in our program, especially in practice, is that if the ball is hit and it goes into the grass, then it goes into the dirt, and then it ends up in the grass, it's automatic 2 bases, no matter what. Automatic, 2 bases. Either first to third, second to home, grass, dirt, grass, 2 bases automatic. Because the ball's not going to have enough speed in order to have that outfielder really be able to get enough momentum through that ball to throw to the lead base. And on defense, we also teach this in the outfield. Guys, if the ball goes grass, dirt, grass, just throw the ball to second base. Okay, so it goes both ways. You can teach this to your base runners and also for defense as well. Ball goes grass, dirt, grass, 2 bases automatic. Either when we're running the bases or on defense, you just throw it to second base. So that's just one thing that I wanted to share there too. When it comes to coming to the bag and approaching the bag, one thing that I learned, and we actually learned this from the Dodgers. When we were at Clemson, they were able to go. I didn't go at this time, but they went out to spring training in Arizona for the Dodgers, and they were working on this stuff. You'll see a video here in a little bit of the Dodgers working on this. But it's the principle of that the eyes lead the body. So one thing that we would do is, I don't know if you guys can see this square up here, but as the guy would approach the bag and they hit with the correct side, they would actually snap their head into the mound. Okay? So we would practice that. As I'm hitting and my left arm comes down, I turn my chest and my head and I turn it into the mound. Whether I'm hitting first base, second base, or third base. And what that does is that it squares off your route and it keeps you in line for as long as possible. It will actually turn your momentum and help you to curb that centrifugal force. So that's one thing that I'll show you here in a second, and it really tightens up your route. Again, it's most effective if your left arm is up. So it's awkward if my right arm is up and then I head turn, versus if my left arm is up and I head turn, those two things can kind of work together. So if I do hit the bag with my left foot, I actually would teach guys not to head turn once their right foot came down. So I wouldn't have them head turn with their left foot hit, but if their right foot hit, they would turn their head. If they happen to hit with the left foot, I would have them take one more step before they turn their head, snap their head to be able to square off their route. So I've seen this work. One thing that we did, and you'll see it here in a little bit, but one thing that we would do to work on this is we would put a chair basically out. If this is first base, I'd kind of walk it off about 6 paces, put it slightly off, and they just had to stay inside of the chair as they're turning the base. Or one good way to do it is if they're scoring from second to home, they want to stay in the dirt baseline the entire time. If they're able to do that, then they got a pretty darn efficient route. Okay? So that's just one thing to keep in mind. I always kind of put my guys into 3 categories. I call them either a rabbit, a dog, or a turtle. Your rabbits are going to be guys that are, super athletic, have a lot of body control. Those are going to be the guys that are going to likely have the tightest arcs around the entire field, where your turtles are probably going to have to get a little bit wider arcs because they're not going to be able to run with as much body lean and they're not going to be running as fast. So their route to be efficient and to keep their momentum might have to be a little bit wider than maybe a rabbit. Where a guy in the middle, I just called him a dog. So because some dogs can run fast, others are pretty slow. So they're kind of somewhere in the middle. So that's kind of how I would put guys into a slightly different category. One thing for turtles that I would recommend, something to think about, is that instead of secondarying in a straight line, I would actually have turtles secondary at a slight backward angle, so that way it helps them to start their arc a little bit sooner. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. Your rabbits, they can secondary in a straight line because their arc's going to be tight. But if I'm a turtle and I'm not really going anywhere, but I want to go 2 bases, I secondary at a slight angle, so that way I'm kind of cheating that arc right away. So that's just one thing to keep in mind based on your personnel. I would call them basically, this is the rabbit lane, this is the dog lane, this is the turtle's lane. So you got 3 lanes around the bases. Basically what I would tell them is, hey, can we get this guy closer to this guy? And can we get this guy closer to this guy? And can we have this guy never break stride? That was my goal with these 3 lanes. Is that this guy could possibly become a 2-lane guy, a 2-lane guy could possibly become a 1-lane guy, and a 1-lane guy who never slows down. That was my goal with those three different types of rabbits, dogs, and turtles. So that's just kind of one little image that you can see the lanes there. This is just an example I stole from Baseball Network, MLB Network. This is a very, very efficient route in my opinion. Notice that it's not bowing out very far. I don't know who this base runner is. However, look how tight that arc is, and look how straight that line is in comparison. Pretty much looks like a dig route right there. Here's the Dodgers working on this. They're obviously running about 4 steps to the bag. Chase Utley, in my opinion, does it the best at the very end. You can see this coach telling him to look down at the bag. I was like that. Look, eyes down the corner. Go one more time. Hit it with the right foot. Turn that head. Chase Utley does it the best, in my opinion, right there. Really poor video quality here, but ball down the left field line, Altuve, around the bases, pretty tight arc all the way around. Notice what foot touches each base. There's a right foot, there's a right foot, and he's there. Centrifugal force was not an issue, ran with body lean. All those things, home to third, under 12 seconds. Pretty impressive. Okay, why is this important? Routes around the bases, right? We want to score more runs. So this data right here shows you that across, this is in the big leagues now, but over the last 7 decades, the success rate of scoring guys from third base with less than 2 outs has really not changed that much. Teams aren't better now at getting guys in from third base with less than 2 outs than they were in the 1960s. They're not that much better, right? All these numbers are pretty similar. So what does this mean? If you want to score more runs, you got to get more guys to third base. So quit focusing on, in my opinion, of course, quit focusing on hammering down, hey, we got to get guys in from third base. Hey, we got to get it done early. Hey, we got to do this, we got to do that. Hey, we can't strike out with guys in scoring position. This, that, or the other. No. Just get more guys at third base, have the numbers played out, and score more runs. So that's why routes around the bases are so important. If you get more opportunities with guys at third base, you'll score more runs. It's hard to hit with guys in scoring position. It's hard to get the guy in from third base. It's hard. It's not easy. So, in my opinion, you should shift your focus a little bit. Shift your focus on getting more opportunities. Then you'll score more runs. Daily practice planning, I think, is the most important thing you can do if you really want to get good at anything. This was one thing I learned from Dan McDonald. He spoke at the convention, my very first convention that I ever went to in Orlando. That was in 2013. He said, you will be good at whatever you emphasize. So whatever you guys emphasize in your program, that's what you're likely going to be good at. So if you emphasize base running and make it a priority, you'll get better at it. So I challenge you to incorporate base running into your daily practice plans. One thing that we did at Piedmont and this was at Piedmont because we had less constraints on time, that kind of thing, of course, than you do at the Division I level. But what we would do is our guys would stretch and we would go right into base running for at least 20 to 30 minutes. So before they picked up a baseball, we worked on base running, either base running or base stealing, for 20 minutes at the beginning of every practice. So what that does is it makes it important. It tells the players that this is important. If you do base running or something at the end of practice, it's less likely that they're going to be super locked in, right? They've already hit BP, they've already taken ground balls, they've already done all the fun stuff in practice, and then you go make them do base running, and you're expecting them to go super full out and be on the razor's edge of focus. I would rather do it at the very beginning because they warm up, their bodies are ready, you get them on the bases, you get them going, and then you go into practice. That's what I would recommend. We worked on diving back a lot. That was one thing that I would focus on if you guys really want to get good at base running and base stealing, especially, is work on diving back. You've got to be able to have guys comfortable getting off the bag. There's a book that I read by Mike Roberts. It's called You Can't Steal Second with Your Foot on First. So it's a great book. If you guys never read it, great book on base running. But it's just one of those things where if you work on diving back, and they're comfortable getting back, being safe, being healthy, then they're going to be more likely to be aggressive on their leadoffs. So that's something that I would work on. I always gave our guys socks. Every practice I had a shoe box full of old socks. I'd give them a pair of socks. They put socks on their arms so that way when they're diving back, they don't cut themselves up. Great way to make them do it without, being super, make sure that you're not getting them hurt while you're doing this stuff, of course. You can't play without your hands, and you don't want to play with, being cut up. So give them something that if you're going to make them be a dirt bag, try to protect them a little bit. Okay, so that's one thing that I did, that I saw that worked. Just some things. This is just kind of some overall thoughts. Base stealing techniques and inter squads. If you really want to be a great base stealing team, you're inter squad, and if a kid gets thrown out, just send him back to first. Have him do it again. And what's that hurt? Right? Pitchers get all upset. Pitching coaches. I've been a part of a bunch of different programs, and I'd say, hey man, just go back to first. And the pitching coach is all up in arms. He's like, well, we got that guy out. We threw him out. I'm like, well, we're working on something, man. We're trying to be good at base stealing, and we're going to score runs for the offense and for your pitchers. So just send them back. Like, who cares about the stats in the fall? It's not that big of a deal. So if you really want to get good at this, if they make a mistake, they get thrown out or picked off, just put them back on the bases, give them another opportunity. Don't punish them for doing something wrong. Because if you really want to get good at stealing bases, there's going to be some growing pains. You're going to get thrown out in a big situation. You're going to get picked off. It's part of the game. But if you instill that that's bad and that they're afraid of that, then they'll never end up being able to be a really good base stealer. So you kind of got to coach that fear out, in my opinion. You want to be low risk, high reward versus high risk, high reward. So these three things, I think, can make you low risk, high reward. I always told our guys you have to have three things in order for you to go. You have to have distance, you have to have anticipation, and you have to have timing. If you have those three things, they were able to go. And they were likely going to be safe if you have those three things. So distance means my lead. Anticipation is just my awareness level, whether I can read a pitcher, that kind of thing. And timing is whether or not we can get a pitcher into a pattern. And if we can do that and we time it all up, then we got something. One of the biggest misconceptions in base stealing, in my opinion, is that a lot of coaches teach a crossover. Okay, is that is the first move that initiates a steal. Okay, I challenge you guys to watch high-level base runners, high-level athletes run the bases. That does not happen. Okay, that does not happen. It does not happen where the first move is a crossover. That's what I was taught as a young player coming up through the game. That does not happen. If you really slow down video, there's two things that happen. And one comes before the next. Number one is that your arms. I believe that your arms is what initiates the steal, the start. Is that your arms do. your arms are much faster and much more, you can have a lot more adjustability with your arms than you can with your legs. So my arms are fast. So if I'm in a neutral position, I'm getting ready to steal, I have focused with my guys on breaking their arms as fast as possible. That is what initiates the steal start, okay? So then from there, now what does the lower half do? So as I break my arms, I want this foot to create direction, and I want this foot to drive, okay? So this foot creating direction, a lot of times what will happen is that this foot will actually retract. You will actually lose ground. You will not gain ground with your right foot. In my opinion, that's what the fastest guys do. You can see right here. This guy is retracting his foot. This is Juan Pierre. His foot is retracting. Same thing right here, right? This is Ricky Henderson. His foot is in basically the exact same position. But look how much more forward he is and how much more his foot is right up underneath his center of mass. So if I gain ground with this foot and cross over with this foot, my feet are not underneath. I'm not going to be able to pick up speed in a short amount of time. And it's only a 78-foot sprint. So you want to try to get up to top speed as fast as possible. How do I do that? I break my arms. I don't look like a sprinter right now. Now I kind of look a little bit closer to a sprinter. Now I get my foot up underneath me and my energy gets projected to second base versus me spinning my tires waiting for it to grab and then take off. So this turn and drive with the lower half is initiated by the upper half, in my opinion. You initiate the upper half, you break your arms, it will happen simultaneously. However, if you can teach this move right here to where this foot just turns and gets underneath them and this foot drives, they're going to be in a very, very powerful athletic position. Okay? Look at this body lean right here. This is one thing I look for in base stealers within the first few steps. All of these guys, I know it's in the first few steps because look at where their eyes are. Their eyes are looking into home plate to see contact, but look at how much body lean that they've created. If this guy doesn't get his foot, this is Ricky Henderson, of course, if he doesn't get his foot up underneath him, he's not going to be able to get this posture in a short amount of time. So that turn and that drive with the lower half is what creates this nice vector into the ground, which projects me into the right direction, where my momentum is going this way versus up, which we've all seen those base runners where the first move is up just to go back down. This right here will project you to go and create acceleration at a much quicker rate. Ricky Henderson was so good at it, they even put it on his baseball card. Right? I put that green line on there, but I just wanted to show you. This guy was so good at it, but you can see right there, it's the same posture that we just saw on the previous picture. So, again, something to look for. How do we read pictures? Okay, a couple things to keep in mind. I was taught to look in between the feet. Some of you guys have probably taught that before. Hey, look in between the pitcher's foot. If his back heel comes up, he's picking. If his front heel comes up, he's pitching. Okay, what I found in teaching that is that we started getting picked off on guys that would have a little bit of a balk move. The guy has a balk move where he kind of buckles that front side, picks up his back foot, picks us off. If your focus is on his feet, you are susceptible to being picked off by a balk move. So I don't teach that. I look at the top and work your way down. I looked at the pitcher's head, and then I worked my way down from there. All of our brains are located in our head. So our head and our posture of our head, what our head is doing, the rhythm of my head, a lot of times gives away what the pitcher's doing. If you actually just really look in and key in on it. Okay, the biggest guy that I see is this guy right here, Bob. That's your typical righty that comes up. He comes up right here, he goes, Bob, Bob, pitch. Comes set next pitch, he goes, Bob, Bob, pitch. And then all of a sudden the coach puts on a pick sign, and what's he do? Head doesn't move. So if you were looking at his feet, you wouldn't have saw that. So look at his head, work your way down, in my opinion. His head will do a lot. The head of the pitcher in his placement, what he's doing, a lot of times will tell the story. So start there, okay? Bill is the other guy, okay? So we got Bob, we got Bill. Bill is the guy that does something with the bill of his cap. Either he tilts it up, he tilts it down, points his bill down, whatever the case might be. Bill is another guy that you can kind of look for, again, with the head. So now we're kind of working down from there. Now we're going to work on the shoulder breather. You guys have all seen that guy that comes set and then pitches, right? He comes set, pitches. That's his timing mechanism of his delivery. Well, if I know that as a base stealer, I just wait till he, and then I take off and get the best jump possible, right there. But if I'm looking at his feet, I wouldn't see that. Maybe his chin gets up. Maybe his chin goes down. Something with his chin. Maybe his front shoulder moves. Maybe his back shoulder moves. This one I see a lot, especially with young pitchers, is they start leaning forward before they pick their foot up. See that all the time. If they start leaning forward, you can just take off. This is all a way for you to have anticipation. Anticipation. This is how you can read a pitcher, in my opinion. And then obviously UCLA, the cadence. You know, in my opinion, when the guy comes set, I always used to ask my players, like, okay, when do you start counting? Well, coach, when the pitcher comes set. And I said, okay, well, what do you key in on how do you know when the pitcher's come set? And the guys are like, I don't know. I'm like, okay, well, we got to define that. So if you're facing a righty, of course, as soon as his elbows have relaxed, that's when you should start counting. U-C-L-A. U-C-L-A. I used to do an exercise where I would go, all right, guys, my mom was a cheerleading coach, so she'd have all of her cheerleaders over, and I could just hear her in my head going, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I would actually do drills where I'd go, all right, guys, 5, 6, 7, 8. U-C-L-A. So 5, 6, 7, 8. U-C-L-A. You can teach them how to count a little bit. But when you start counting, I believe the best way to do it is to wait until the elbows have relaxed, then you start counting. Because now you can get rid of the guy that has the delayed set, which you see all the time. Guy comes set, takes him forever to actually come set. You know, it's like the guy off of Angels in the Outfield. You know what I mean? Bass sets again. That kind of, okay? So now let's talk a little bit about how we can incorporate some stuff into our steel breaks, all right? So 12 foot is kind of the boundary at first base. That's what I would use. I usually would put a string out there or use the painter, you know, the line painter. I'd go out there, I'd draw a line, I'd measure out 12 feet, draw a line in the dirt, and then when we're working on our steels and our lead lengths, I would have that boundary out there to know where they're at on the field. So all these momentum steel breaks is basically taking you from a standstill lead and trying to incorporate a little bit of momentum in order for you to get a running start, basically, on a steel break. So we have a momentum shuffle and a couple different things, okay? A momentum shuffle is basically one shuffle to where if this is the boundary, I want to start my lead inside the boundary, okay? And I want to actually shuffle into my lead to where I try to get a running start, basically. It's a momentum shuffle. Some people call it a new school lead or a jump lead. I don't like the term jump lead because jump means that I leave the ground. And if I was teaching this momentum shuffle, I would teach them the complete opposite, that you want to stay as low to the ground as possible. So I never use the term jump lead because jump means I jump. So I use momentum shuffle because that is a little bit more, it explains kind of the movement a little bit better. So this is 12 feet. Again, I'll show you some videos here in a second. But basically, in between the cadence, you would take one shuffle, land, and go. So if I'm going on C, the pitcher comes set, U, shuffle, C, go. So I've gotten a little bit of a running start, and you can see here, just kind of that setup. This is all my guys right here. They're all lined up. You can kind of see this line right here. That's 12 feet. I believe that 12-foot line should kind of intersect the middle of your body. Some people teach 12-foot, left foot. You know, whatever. I like middle of the body. I think it's easier to align the middle of your body than it is a specific foot. So that's why I always use middle of the body. Had a bunch of bases out there to create that boundary. See here. This is just really good athlete showing you guys how to move here on the momentum shuffle. It's a way to practice it. Now I'll go back to this really quick, try to show you that right jab step or that left jab step is one of the most important things about this shuffle lead. Because if I shuffle with 2 feet at once, I'm going to leave the ground. But if I take a right jab and I shuffle, I can keep my feet on the ground. I would tell them when we worked on the turf that I want to see pellets come up off your back foot. I want pellets to come up as you're moving. I wanted to see some of those rubber pellets come up. So that tells me that they're kind of low to the ground. So this would be just an example again. I'm putting a baseball out there at 12 feet, showing middle of the body. Now I'm shorter than that. I shuffle and take off. So again, I'm not super athletic anymore. That looks terrible. This guy was the master. This kid is Brady Ballstat. He has every record at Piedmont University. And his brother has all the other records. So this family is super athletic. This guy went 36 for 37 in one season, stolen bases. Everybody knew he was going. They still couldn't throw him out. This is a great example of a momentum steal. It takes off and goes. You can see right here. I'll show it one more time. Look at this posture right here. Another thing that I like to teach. Doesn't look super threatening, right? If I get out there and I got Mr. Johnny, anxious, then what are you going to do as the pitching coach? You're going to call pitch. You're going to throw over there. But if this guy's over here, he looks like that, all right, don't have to worry about this guy, and then all of a sudden, bang, gone. Just one example of a momentum shuffle. So there's a couple other ways to create some momentum. There's a leaning lead and a walking lead. These are a little bit less risky. They're gonna probably create a little bit less momentum than an actual shuffle. But this is another way that you can take guys that are kind of above average runners, kind of make them a little bit more dynamic. So a leaning lead is basically I get out to my boundary, I get in a good stance. One thing about a stance that I like to teach is I want to take the inside parts of my knees and I kind of want to pinch them together. So as I do that, I can kind of feel some energy on the inside parts of my legs. So that way it can project me this way, or I can use that energy to project me this way, back to the bag. And I want to get athletic, and I want my hands basically, if I'm holding a lunch tray, and then I just get athletic, that's about where I told guys to have their hands. So from right here, all I would teach them to do is just kind of lean. So I get in my stance, guy comes set, U, C, L, A. And if I got this prior to him picking up his foot and pitching, I would use that energy and that shin angle that I've created to project me and get me up to full speed faster than if I was just at a standstill. Okay, so that's one way that you can kind of have a little bit of a wrinkle on your standstill. Ricky Henderson kind of would do it where he would just kind of lean into it and go. Jimmy Rollins was more so a guy that would kind of lean U, C, L. And if I got that, I would go. One of the other rules that I would tell guys about momentum steals is that you always want to have movement prior to the action. So you want all your movement to happen before the action starts. It's almost like you have an imaginary button, just like this, that just picks up the pitcher's foot whenever you want it. So that would be kind of how I would explain it to them. And then a walking lead, which I'll show you here in just 1 second on a video. I think I can show you on the video better than that. Here's a walking lead. Oops. See if it'll play. You can see it right here on this next angle. He gets out short, U, C, L, gone. Show you one more time. This is Elvis Andrews. So you can see here, he's in a little bit of a shorter lead, U, C, L, C. So all he did was just walk out to the boundary, but he used that rhythm and that momentum to get a little bit of a running start. It's a really good way to steal. And I'll tell you this right here, a right-handed pitcher will never be able to see this happen. Never be able. Most pitchers don't have a flexible enough neck or the peripheral vision to actually see what's going on. So if you're subtle with your movements, you can move around a little bit with no one seeing it. So this is again just an example of that. Go play. C, L, go. Elvis Andrews is a lot more athletic than me. All right, stealing third, really quick. Everybody talks about how many looks is he, right? Is he one look guy, two look guy, no look guy? I get that, okay? In my opinion, that's not the most important question to ask. In my opinion, the most important question to ask is, what kind of looker is he? What kind of looker? How is the pitcher looking at you at second base? Versus how many times he looks. Because how he's looking at you is going to tell you when you should start to get momentum, or start to get your vault lead, or start to get your jump, whatever the case might be. That is what tells you when the window of time is, not how many looks. Because if he's a one-look guy, let's say he's a one-look guy, and he looks away and pitches right away, and if you wait until he turns away, he's already picked up his foot, it's too late by then. So yeah, he's a one-look guy, but really you've got to ask, okay, is he a guy that picks up home plate? So is he a pitcher that looks for X amount of times, picks up home plate, and pitches? That's pitcher number one. Then you have a guy that looks, and then as he's turning his head, his foot comes up. So that's kind of the second guy. And then you have the rare guy that pitches while he's looking at second base, which most pitching coaches won't allow. Some of you pitching coaches in here probably won't allow that. But that guy right there, everybody gets scared of that guy. Well, he's looking at me. Well, doesn't matter. You can still steal on a guy that's looking at second base. You just got to know when to get your momentum. So that's where it comes into what kind of looker is it. Now, if you match up knowing what kind of looker he is with the number of looks, you'll steal third base without a play. So I had an interview at Piedmont. I remember telling Justin Scally, I said, Justin, I said, if you hire me here, we're going to steal so many bases, we're going to lead the nation in steals at third with no throw. And he's like, okay, well, there's no stat for that, but I can guarantee you we led the nation in steals at third with no throw. I'm telling you right now, it works. And if you match it up, then that's where you can really get a very easy stolen base. This is kind of what the lead would look like at second base. So I don't have guys take just a direct lead. I kind of have them go off at an angle and then work their way into the baseline. One reason why I do this is because if I started here and just started gaining ground, the shortstop would know kind of where I started and where I finished. But if I walk towards him and I'm kind of at an angle and I just walk into the baseline, let's say I take a lead, I'm kind of off the baseline and I start working into the baseline, it looks like I'm just walking into the baseline, but really I just gained some footage. I've gained some lead length. So this was one way that I would use the painter to kind of help our guys with their routes. To get to this point on the field, if they led with their right foot, it was 7 steps. If they led with their left foot, it was 8 steps. So for what it's worth, that's kind of what that means there. Let's see here. Steal a third. Okay. So this is just a base running chart. I wanted to show you guys something that I've been using for years since my first year in coaching. You got your UCLA right here, so you can just put little tallies on, what the pitcher's doing. You kind of have some information up here. If he has any tells, maybe he's a Bob guy or Bill guy. He's a shoulder breather. Looks at second. Pitcher's times to the plate. You got everything you need there. This is kind of what I would use on a daily basis when I would scout guys, especially at Clemson when we had synergy. I would look up synergy, watch their pickoffs, watch their times to the plate. I would have all this filled out before we even went into the game. Obviously, you guys don't have that, but this is something that you could, maybe a kid's a sophomore, he comes in the game, you're taking a chart on the bench. You figured out that he's a one-look guy every time. Next thing you know, you face him next year, pull this chart out for the game. Hey guys, when you get on second base, he's a one-looker. He looks like this. In the first inning, you got 2 stolen bases. Next thing you know, you put up a big inning in the first. Just because you did your homework and you charted something. Might happen. All right, guys, that's kind of all I had for the base running stuff. I wanted to briefly just tell you guys a little bit about what I do now. I have my own recruiting service, obviously Full Count Advisors. I specialize in the recruiting process where I represent players, high school players, and try to help them get to college. I know Corey was talking earlier about how you guys can be advocates for your players. I'm a huge believer in high school baseball is the most important thing for a kid that's in high school. I 100% agree with that. It's not travel ball, it's not showcase, it's not camps. I think the most important thing that a high school player could do is impress you guys. and have you guys vouch for them. If you guys want to make a bigger impact in their life for moving them on to college, one thing that I would recommend that you guys do is try to reach out to coaches and go watch their practice. It is a double whammy for you, right? You get to go learn some things about practice, and you might get to create a relationship with the coaching staff that if you have a guy that you think can play there, and now you can say, hey coach, I came and watched you play. I watched your shortstop and all your shortstops out there. I got a kid that I think can play for you. I think the biggest rub of high school or college coaches is when they have a guy come up to you and say, hey, I think I got a guy that can play for you. When that guy doesn't know me, that guy doesn't know my program, guy's never seen me play, never seen our team play, has no idea what our players look like, that is a big turnoff for a college coach. However, if you've seen them practice, you've watched them play, you have a relationship with them, and you call them and say, hey, I got a shortstop for you, they're much more likely to look into your guy that you have. Okay? So one piece of advice that I would give you, I used to love, Coach Hucks used to come over to Clemson with his staff and come over and just learn from them, hang around the coaches, hang around the cages. That was awesome because now they know what our players look like. So that's one thing that I would recommend, excuse me, from your guys' role as the high school coach, I think is super important. What I do is I just try to help people in this process. I represent players to where I go scout them, I use my expertise and my experience in evaluating players. I've been across a bunch of different levels. I can look at them with an objective eye, and I say, hey, listen, I know you want to go play at Clemson in Carolina, but listen, man, I'm not calling Monty Lee on your behalf until you're good enough. And I tell them that. And I say, but listen, you need to look at these other programs that are play really good baseball in our state. Maybe D2. Hey, have you ever heard of Piedmont University? I pull that one out, right? I use that all the time. But it's all about the fit. It's all about the fit. It used to matter to players going somewhere where you would play. It used to matter. Anymore, it matters how many likes they got on Instagram saying I committed somewhere. Don't have a D1 bias. Do not. That's the biggest mistake you can make towards your players, is having a Division I bias. It's not what it's about. I tell every player in my organization, 36 of them in 15 different states, that if you guys are a D1 or bust guy, I will give you your money back. I literally tell them that. I said, listen, I'm just going to give you your money back because I don't deal with guys that have a D1 bias. I want you to play at the highest level, but I'm about getting you to the best experience. I specialize in making sure that these guys are going somewhere, that they're getting taken care of by people that are good people, do it the right way, and that they can go somewhere where they can go and compete and fit in. So that's kind of what I do in a nutshell. These are just some things that I do. Probably doesn't really apply to you guys, but if you ever have a player in your program, your summer team or whatever that's really looking for some guidance in recruiting, maybe you don't have any experience, I have a ton of connections in the game. Just keep me in mind if you ever have a player that you want and that might need some assistance or some representation when it comes to recruiting. Okay? I got 12 guys committed already out of the 36. Got a lot of younger guys. I only got one guy committed to Division I. So what I'm learning is that a lot of these Division I players, they also don't need a guy like me. The guys that need a guy like me are the guys that want to go to D2, D3, JUCO, NAIA. The guys that need some help are those are the guys that's kind of my sweet spot. Okay? So just keep that in mind. You guys might not know a lot about Division III baseball. There's no Division III baseball in South Carolina. But I can tell you right now, Division III baseball is not glorified high school baseball. I can tell you that right now. I see Lynn, Kelly, who played for me in the summer collegiate league. He played at Covenant College, and he can tell you right now, USA South baseball is very good. Right, Lynn? This here's some I created. Some of you guys can use for your own guys if you want to. I call it the recruiting personality questionnaire. I've every single one of my players that I've worked with fill this out. This is the first thing that we go over together. Basically tells me everything I want to know. Tells me everything I want to know about what this kid and what experience that he's looking for. So just kind of some self-reflection questions. Everything I need to know is right there on that paper. It creates a great dialogue. Spend about an hour on this. This is what we talk about. Very first call that I ever have with a kid that signs up to come work with me. But I thought it was a good idea, maybe something you could use to get to know your players better, to where if you're going to represent them or help them get to college, you can really dive into what kind of experience that they're looking for. And the last thing, my kind of mantra, or the acronym that I use, if you guys follow me on Twitter, I put this in like every tweet that I put out there, is makeup. Hashtag makeup. This is what college coaches are looking for, guys with makeup. They're looking for, that's one of the first questions that I get, because they know that I'm getting to know these people, and they say, the first question they say is, JB, have you seen him play? It's the first question I get. So I go out and I scout every player that I have, and the next question I get is, what kind of makeup does this kid have? First question I get. So you guys might not have the relationships with the coaches that I have. So I can be a resource for you guys if you see it fit. Some of you guys don't need my help, or some of your players don't need my help, but if you do, you know you have someone that's been in the industry, that has a good reputation, that has, you know, some experience in this, that I can help you guys, you know, take some stuff off your plate, per se, right? Corey was talking about all the things that you can add to your plate with all that technology, that sheet, that all was awesome. That's great, but some of that stuff you might not want to put on your plate because you're fixing the field, you don't have the equipment, all that stuff. Well, when it comes to recruiting, if you're looking for a resource, someone to help take some stuff off your plate, just please keep me in mind, okay? This is my contact information. Be happy to send you these PowerPoints. Any questions that you guys have? If you guys want me to come do, you know, a recruiting talk, or come do a base running, you know, seminar with your team. You guys want me to come out, just hang out, let me know. I'm looking for ways to get on the field. So, you know, I kind of missed that part, being on this side of the game now. So if you guys ever need anything from me, I'd be happy to share with you guys. You know, I think baseball is one of those sports that it's very easy to share things because it's the hardest game there is. Right? Bill Belichick isn't going to come up here and say, well, when we get this coverage, these are the 6 plays that we run when we see that coverage. He's not going to share that. Right? But baseball, it's already hard enough. You know, it's easy to share. And I've learned all this stuff here I just stole from somebody else. And then I learned from someone else, just like we all do. That's what coaching is. So I really appreciate it, guys. Thank you guys for your time. And thank you all for having me. Thanks, Eddie.